It's one of the companies at the forefront of the coronavirus vaccination. We did see all-time highs hit for the AstraZeneca share price. But since then, it's been in decline since last summer. So what could the next few months hold? Are we going to see a recovery back to those all-time highs, or actually this slide that's been in place continue? I thought we'd take a look at AstraZeneca. I mean, clearly, pharmaceutical companies massively in focus over the last 6 months because of the coronavirus. AstraZeneca is one of the companies providing the vaccine. We did see all-time highs hit last year. This is the US listing for AstraZeneca, up at $65 a share. They got a bit of a lift in November when we saw the start of all the vaccine news, the trials being successful, all of that. But since then, they've really struggled to find any momentum. So I thought, well, let's take a look at them in a bit more detail, talk about some of the recent news, the fundamentals, and then come back onto this and look and see what the technicals say for AstraZeneca. So I'll do that now, then we'll come back and look at the chart in a lot more detail. Hello, I'm David Jones from Capital.com, and I thought for the next stock on our stocks channel, we take a look at a company that has been in the news a lot over the last, 6 months or so, and that is AstraZeneca, of course, around they're one of the companies providing the vaccine for the coronavirus, COVID-19. So I thought, let's take a look at them in a bit more detail and see where the opportunities may be in the weeks and the months to come. So as usual in this video, I'll talk about the company a bit, look at some of the recent news, talk about their recent earnings, then we'll jump back onto the platform and take a look at things in a bit more detail, because I think it is an interesting chart from a technical and a charting point of view for AstraZeneca. So we'll take a look at that in a couple of minutes' time. As usual, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, if you could click on subscribe, it does help support the channel and means we can continue to push out lots of content on different stocks during the week. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at AstraZeneca in a bit more detail. So in case you didn't know, AstraZeneca is a global pharmaceuticals company. It's listed actually in a few places. You can buy their stocks. They list on the UK Stock Exchange, also list on the Swedish Stock Exchange, and in the US, they're listed on NASDAQ. So when we take a look at them on the platform, we'll take a look at them in the US market. Of course, they've been in the news a lot over the last few months, along with other major pharmaceutical companies, because AstraZeneca is one of the companies that has come up with and delivers a vaccine for the coronavirus for COVID-19. And they reckoned that by the end of April of this year, they would be shipping something like 200 million vaccines per month. Of course, it hasn't been without controversy. There is some ongoing dispute with the European Union over claimed delayed deliveries of the vaccine from AstraZeneca, and this has prompted a lawsuit from the EU. The European Union has a contract with AstraZeneca up until the end of June, and it says it has chosen not to renew the contract past then, but is taking vaccines off a competing drug company. In its latest earnings update, the chief exec came out and said that its non-profit approach to the vaccine would continue through this year, and it expected it to end at some point in 2022. So for now, AstraZeneca will continue to deliver and provide the vaccine on a non-profit basis. The earnings were pretty good for AstraZeneca this time round. In its latest quarterly earnings update, they came in at $1.63 per share, which was about 10% higher than the consensus expectation for earnings. But if we look at the share price, it's something of a mixed picture. So for the year to date, the shares are up around 8%, which is a good performance. But if we look at them from their all-time high back in the summer of last year, they're down about 15%. So they had been in a fairly steady decline, which I think makes them look interesting. But let's take a look at the levels to watch, then we'll jump back onto the platform. So I think the immediate hurdles to any upside progress come in around from last year, $55, the December high, and after that, I think it's the high from in November, around $58. On the downside is where it gets a bit more interesting for anybody looking to see if there's potential for a bounce from these levels. For me, the most immediate support is from April at 48.20. And after that, we're looking at the March lows, the lows for the year so far, around $46.40 a share. But as usual, let's put a bit of color on these numbers. Let's take a look at it, take a look at the trends and some indicators on the platform and take a technical look at AstraZeneca. Here's a quick look at the bigger picture view for AstraZeneca. This is the US listing. You can trade the other listings with us as well, but I thought let's take a look at it in US dollars. So I've got the chart going back to the end of 2016. I've picked up on the lows from 2017. I do think we have a trend going on here, but we'll come back and talk about this a bit more in a second. First of all, let's take a look at the moving average. Let's see what that's been doing over the last 18 months or so. So moving averages, if you're familiar with them, do a good job when markets are trending, when the market moves above the moving average, as we saw with AstraZeneca in March of last year. It's a buy signal. When the price falls below the moving average, it's a sell signal. When markets go sideways, it can get a bit messy and we have a flip-flop of buys and sells. But I thought it was interesting what's been going on over the last few months. So the last buy signal we had for AstraZeneca would have been mid-April, as we did see, and we have seen since the March lows, the market try and build a succession of higher highs and higher lows. So far at least, it's interesting that the moving average did provide some support here in late April as the price came down to the sort of $50 area, moved away from that moving average at the moment coming in around $52.50. Let's take a look at the RSI. So the relative strength index thought to be a bit better when markets are a bit sideways, a bit more choppy. The last buy signal we had for AstraZeneca, it worked pretty well eventually. It took a few days, but the RSI, when oversold in late Feb, came out of it first week of March, and this did coincide with what has proved to be so far a major low for AstraZeneca. Signals we've had since then, we've had a sell signal up here, which did pretty good in calling a short-term top at least in the third week of April. And we do have at the moment what's known as bearish divergence, where the price of AstraZeneca has continued to push higher, but the RSI isn't following suit. So the RSI is making lower highs, even though the price is making higher highs. So this can be a suggestion that perhaps the current strength is running out of steam. But some chartists may well still see this as an opportunity. Let's go back to our bigger picture view. So for me, we do have this uptrend in AstraZeneca over the years, going back to 2017. So we're 4 years into this. Clearly, it got a lot more volatile in March last year when we saw plenty of shares, most shares get hit really hard as the coronavirus pandemic spread. Then we saw a sharp bounce back in stock markets. But overall, that trend is still up. At the moment, the trend line support is coming in around $43. But what I'm wondering is whether this correction is over from when it punched out to fresh all-time highs above $64. Are we seeing the end of that correction? Let's just zoom things in. So we did have almost a textbook trend line off those highs, at a few touches of that trend line. And I think what's interesting from a technical point of view and a trend point of view, that that trend line was broken in mid-April. So some chartists and technical analysts would take the view, well, actually, perhaps this correction is over and the bullish sentiment is back for AstraZeneca. It has been trying to build a recovery. We've got the early stages of a trend off the March lows. I think good support coming in at 51. Also the lows at $50 from late April. So if this trend really has turned, then for now, chartists would view any sell-offs as really a buying opportunity. And I think for me, the crucial level for me would still be where this recovery trend started, down at sort of $46.50. I think only if it breaks below $46.50 does it look as if that correction is resuming, and we could see the price move lower back to this longer term trend line. But I think it's an interesting turn of fortune over the last month, 6 weeks or so for AstraZeneca. Initially, I think next targets would be probably $58, the mid-November highs from 2020, assuming it can clear the most recent resistance around 55. But given the break we've seen in that correction, I certainly think this is an interesting stock to watch from these levels. That's it for this update on AstraZeneca. We'll come back to it and see how it fares, see if it can continue the gains for this year, or actually have we already seen the best? We'll come back and have a look. But for now, from me, David Jones and Capital.com, we'll leave things there. Good luck with your investing and trading. For more trading videos just like this, please subscribe to our channel.